Welcome everybody to our SPEDNet webinar, Special Needs Kids, Extraordinary Parenting, Strong Siblings with Dave Sylvestro. We are really excited to have this topic. Dave and I were talking the other night about how we've been talking about having this particular topic for like 20 years now. Anyway, we're really pleased to have you joining us. I'm Eve Kessler, co-founder and executive director of SPEDNet, and our tech consultant was Ali Sheffers. SPEDNet was created over 20 years ago as a nonprofit to educate and empower parents of students with special needs to become their children's best advocates. In addition to our webinars and presentations, we have a terrific and easily accessible website with videos of all our presentations and webinars sorted by topic and speaker, as well as related articles and all the materials. So not only tomorrow you'll be getting, or maybe later today, a copy of today's video and any materials, the PowerPoint or whatever that goes along with it. And then you'll also be able to access it and all the other webinars on our website. We've also published an excellent interactive guide to special services, bringing knowledge to the table, how to be an effective advocate for your child. It's free on our website, and paperbacks are available for purchase. If you have a student in the Wilton Public Schools, you may receive a paperback copy free of charge if you ask. Today, we welcome school psychologist Dave Sylvestro, who will discuss how having a child with special needs can affect all family members. He'll explain how you as parents can be proactive in ensuring as best as you can that siblings don't feel sidelined when attention is necessarily focused on their sibs with special needs. And he'll also discuss how to keep tabs on the emotional climate of the household, how to educate, explain, and elicit questions from siblings, how to ensure all kids feel prized, recognized, and celebrated, and how to enhance communication between parents. Dave is a retired school psychologist from the Southport School, as well as from Eagle Hill, Greenwich, where he served over 35 years. He has facilitated individual and group counseling sessions, parent support groups, and dads-only groups, and has provided training and staff development for professionals. Dave continues to be a frequent presenter and support group facilitator in Fairfield County. If you find our information and support to be helpful, feel free to donate to SPEDNet. We're a nonprofit organization, and your donations go directly into programming. Okay, a few ground rules. Be mindful that this is an open forum and the presentation is being recorded, so we can't guarantee confidentiality. You may not want to reveal any private information in your questions. As I said, the webinar video will be sent out to all of you by email tomorrow and posted on our website and YouTube channel. Dave will take questions. Put your questions in the question and answer in the Q&A and not in the chat, and I'll be monitoring them throughout. If Dave will I'll either read one and Dave will take it during it if it has specifically to do with what he's talking about at the time, or at the end we'll definitely have time for questions. Any information provided in this presentation is for general information purposes only and is not intended to be legal or therapeutic advice. Lastly, this webinar is presented in partnership with Wilton Public Schools and the Newtown SPED PTA. Thank you, and take it away, Dave.
Thank you, Ms. Eve. Hi, just a couple of things before I start. I went to do the presentation, the slide presentation on PowerPoint, because that's I guess it's the most used one, and I don't have it anymore because I have a new machine. And so I will try, Eve, I'm sorry, but I will try to put it on Google Slides because I think that's a popular one too. I'm not guaranteeing that I'll be able to do that, but I will try to do that. And so you can distribute it in both forms.
I think that our tech guy will be able to do whatever we need.
Oh, great. Okay.
Okay.
Really good tech guy, because I'm not that person. And when Eve was talking about this presentation and how we've been talking about it for a long time, we've done work at Eagle Hill and Greenwich and at Southport, the Southport School, with siblings of our kids for more than a couple of decades, because in our role as counselors, we talk with kids a lot, and we talk about their families and what goes on with their siblings, and how that can be. It can be joyful and it can be challenging, and so we got the idea that it might be a good thing for us to educate siblings about what goes on with their brother or sister who happens to come to a school for kids at Eagle Hill, for example, kids who have learning disabilities and attention deficits. And so we've been doing that, and I'll talk a little bit more about the format of that in a little bit. But yeah, it's been a long time, and we've been trying to figure out how we can do it in this format, which is not in person, and having a lot of counselors available to work with groups of kids without special needs. And this is the best we could come up with so far, but we're glad we're going to do it. But thanks for being here. Why this topic? Is because having a special needs child in the family has a ripple effect to everybody in the family, and that extends out to extended family as well. That our kids, and the way they manifest their learning profile or their attention profile or the behavioral profile has an impact on the way of other people, the way the families work. And we have spoken with families about the fact that they feel as though they have to contort themselves to make sure that things go smoothly, which is actually one of the joys of having support groups, when parents get to talk with other parents about what it's like in their families, and that they have to lay out the clothes the night before for their 7th graders. And when you talk with people who don't have special needs in the family, they think that that's something that's very unusual. And you get a lot of nods around the table when you say that amongst parents of our kids. And so it's something that we wanted to talk about, because sibling relationships are really crucial for both sides, for the special needs kids as well as the other kids. And so that's why we're doing this. And then we're talking a little bit about what do we learn from our siblings. As siblings, what do we learn from our siblings? And that learning goes both ways. It goes from the non-special needs kids to their kids, their siblings with special needs, and vice versa as well. We also talk about some prevailing sibling attitudes. As part of the programs that we did with the kids at school, we talked to them about what would you like your sibling with a learning disability, some special needs, what would you like them to know? And then we asked our kids before the sibling nights what they would like their siblings who are coming to this program to know about what it's like to be them. And then we'll talk about family education, about one of the things that we can do to help facilitate the progress toward sibling relationships and interactions that are more constructive and more productive, if that's possible. And I'd love to say that we can turn that around right away, and we can't, but some things to keep in mind. And then we're going to do tips, and then we're going to do a Q&A. And again, as Eve said, if there's a question that comes up about some of the things that I'm saying, because I haven't said it well enough, Eve will field those questions and interrupt and ask me to sort of go over it a little bit more. Does that make sense, Eve? Good so far? Okay. I'm sorry. I had to go forward and look at these cartoons. Let's have more kids, I said. It'll be easier when they have somebody to play with. Sometimes. These are some things that we learn from our siblings in general. When we have more than one child in the family, it presents an opportunity for the kids to be able to learn how to share. They learn how to have their toys be used sometimes by them and sometimes by the other sibling. They learn how to take turns in games, whether they're playing cards or Chutes and Ladders or Candyland or whatever. It's about being able to take turns and demonstrating patience when that happens. Sometimes this learning process of sharing and taking turns and playing together is smooth, but I've never heard it be smooth because there always is some friction that arises, and the parent's role is to help the kids learn their way and practice their way to being able to do this better. We learn how to communicate our needs. When I'm a younger sib and I listen to my older sib, who has more sophisticated language than I do and a better understanding of what their needs are and what their feelings are, and I listen to them communicate that to parents and other people, I can pick from that listening that I just did as to how I can do that better myself. They learn how to negotiate. There are going to be differences of opinion. There's going to be, I think this is the best way to do it, and I think this is the best way to do it. And when they're at loggerheads, they will learn how to be able to talk with one another to find a way to compromise and find a way to sort of resolve this conflict. Cooperation is huge. We always talk in this country about how competition is what really drives the success of this country. And when you look at it, it's really about our ability to cooperate. How do we manage to work with each other in groups at school? And groups if we're playing on teams, or if we're in an art class or in an orchestra, or when we're in a business. It's really all about cooperation, and that learning how to cooperate really starts with our sibs. And express feelings, we talked about that a little bit, and how to care for others as well. That there are going to be times when our kids do nice things for one another. They actually, whether they're trying to or not, the way that they respond to their sib who may be having a hard time is actually empathetic and caring for the other person. That doesn't get lost. Other kids pay attention to that. And a little bit of an aside, when we have a special needs kid in the family, one of the roles that we have as parents is to be a highlighter, so that if we see the kids doing something kind, or doing something that is selfless, or doing something that expresses patience or demonstrates patience, we as a parent can't expect that our kids with special needs are going to necessarily assimilate that experience in the right way without us sort of putting a label to it. That's great patience. Oh my God, you were so kind when you did that. Those sorts of things. That makes sense? Move on. And this sort of made me laugh. This is my sister, and she wonderful. Look how proud he is of her. It's so nice that they always have each other. Shall we start the bidding at $5? Who wants her? Sometimes our kids have relationships with one another that are really smooth, and sometimes can be really contentious. And I think, again, a reason for presentations like this and the work that we do with groups of siblings, is to have the normal contentiousness be limited in terms of duration. That we want to help families provide opportunities for kids to be able to get along with one another reasonably well. Siblings also help siblings acquire skills like cognitive, language, and social skills. They, again, watching how older siblings reason, can figure problems out. We learn from that as a younger sib. And language is the same way. The way that parents talk is certainly one of the ways that we want our kids to be able to learn too, but they really listen to their siblings more. And social skills as well. When kids are in groups, they see how their older sibling interacts with them, and they want to learn from that as well. Effective communication. This is the best way to do it. This is the best volume of my voice when I'm talking with someone. This is the way that I use my body. This is the way I manage my facial expression. They also learn academics. They also learn knowing how games run and the rules of them and the protocols of these. And so the sibling relationship is really a crucial one in the family. There are lots of things to learn. There are lots of opportunities to learn them. And so we want to, as best we can, help our kids when they are not able to work through difficult times on their own. We want to be able to facilitate that progress toward a better time. And this one sort of maybe last too, when we talk about the way that kids learn language. Okay. All right. Siblings without special needs can learn from special needs sibs as well. In other words, if we have a sibling who has special needs, one of the things that is available to the sibs without special needs that may be different in families that don't happen to be blessed with kids with special needs, they learn tolerance. They learn how to accept that things are not always going to go the way that they want to understand that their sister or brother may not have the ability to go through life with the same degree of smoothness as they do, and they learn how to tolerate that. Kids can learn how to be less judgmental. If they have a kid in their family whom they love because it's their brother or sister, and they have difficult times doing work or controlling tempers and those sorts of things, they can be less judgmental when they see that happening outside their family, and the different level of sensitivity. They see that their sibs family, their feelings, it can be kind of volatile and can be hurt easily. And so the non-special needs kids has an opportunity to be able to learn how to be careful with those. Sense of affiliation, that we belong together as a family. Perspective, when they think that my problems, my difficult path is sort of severe, it allows them to think, yeah, this is hard, and it's legitimately hard, and it's okay to feel that this is really hard. When I look at what my sister or brother is going through, however, it gives me a little bit more perspective, and that can be helpful. Forgiveness. I think forgiveness is a big quality that we can demonstrate in families in general, but if you have a special needs kid in the house, and if you have a special needs sibling, there are going to be maybe a few more opportunities to demonstrate forgiveness. Patience, really a great opportunity to recognize what impatience is, and to be able to practice patience, and from a parent's point of view, to be able to highlight patience when they see that demonstrated. Independence. There are going to be times when your parents' attention is going to be legitimately drawn to your sibling who happens to have special needs. Complaining about that, railing about that, having a tantrum about that does not really work. Kids without special needs in the family sometimes can learn a degree of independence that can be a little bit precocious in a good way. Emotional expression is the same way. How can I talk with my parents about the fact that it's hard for me when I need help and it's not available because my sibling is getting it all. Resilience, same thing. To be able to watch their brother or sister have a special need, be able to get up and dust themselves off after a really difficult time, they can say, that kind of bounce back is something that's obviously a good thing to do.
Stop you for 1 second, because we have questions about the same thing. What happens when the older sibling is the one who has the special needs, so the younger one isn't able to, quote unquote, look up to that older sibling to get to learn?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, first of all. And what happens if these things are not able to be learned by the younger sibling from their older sibling, it is something that for parents, and again, another thing layered on parents, to understand that when they demonstrate resilience and patience and independence and sensitivity and all those things, that's the opportunity for the younger sibling to be able to learn from that as well. They also, younger siblings, they have a different capacity. If they don't have special needs, they have a different capacity to learn from other areas besides the family and besides the siblings. And so it really is, they are in a position to learn from the way that they see that their parents are dealing with their kids, their siblings who happen to have special needs. Does that clear that up at all, or shall we talk about that a little bit more?
Let's see. Well, we'll see what comes in.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It is a difficult sometimes situation when the younger child doesn't have the special needs in the family, because they miss some of this stuff. They miss some of these learning opportunities that would normally come from their siblings. And it has other effects as well. I mean, sometimes the younger sibling without special needs, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit as well, but can sometimes hold him or herself back because they don't want to pass their siblings. There are a number of families, older kids, when they came to these groups when they were 16, 17 years old, said, I have a brother who's 3 years older than I was, and I decided that I wasn't going to have a date until he did. And so all of the opportunities that she had to have dates, she held back on those because she didn't think it would be fair for the younger sibling to have her first date before her older sibling did. And so, good, bad, indifferent, it doesn't really matter, but the path of the younger sibling's life had certainly an impact of that. Yes, Eve, is that another question? Or are we okay?
Yep, 1 minute, 1 sec.
Okay.
The oldest child brings disruptive behavior into the home, yep, and the younger child imitates it. And so that sets the tone for the whole family.
Yeah, not an unusual thing, because when the older child is disruptive, what usually happens with the special needs kid in the family, that is the kid who gets a lot of attention. And sometimes when you see the younger non-special needs kids acting out, seeming to imitate the older brother or sister, if we treat that as a cry for attention, as opposed to I am adopting this behavioral set because I think it's okay, and then we provide sort of different opportunities to have the younger child get attention for behaviors that are not disruptive and not outrageous and not stuff that are things that are interfering with the family. Can be a very helpful way to help the younger child sort of move from I need to get attention in the same way that my older sister or my older brother does. I can get it in a different way. Make sense? Okay.
Yes, I have a follow-up question. Any advice for twins, one of whom has special needs? I often find my neurotypical twin emulating the behavior of special needs twin for attention or being caught in the crosshairs of a disruptive situation.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I mean, it is probably exacerbated by twins because they're both supposedly on the same developmental plane, but they're really not if you've got one with special needs and one who doesn't. But to sort of look at the behavior in a different way, because if we think the sibling who is struggling, the twin who is struggling to manage his or her behavior, that example is being tattooed in the other sibling, it's not really the case. We need to help to try to teach the sibling without special needs that, and give them experiences that positive behavior, non-disruptive behavior, showing resilience and good recovery. Those are the ways to get attention and praise differently from acting out. Acting out gets attention. I mean, there's no question about it. We need to help the sibling who can make this learning connection in a different way from the special needs kids, perhaps, make the connection with our responding to positive behavior. I mean, there's this thing, catch the kids doing it well, catch the kids doing it correctly, catch the kids being positive. It's another thing that we can do to help break this particular connection between emulating bad behaviors for attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. We also learned resilience. I think we talked about that. Loyalty as well. It's easy to be loyal to a team or a family member who's everything's hunky-dory for that kid or that family or that team. It's a little bit more challenging to demonstrate loyalty. And when kids in the family can learn how to to understand, accept, and kind of celebrate uniqueness and my sibling who has special needs, and to sort of be their ally. That's a big important lesson. And also persistence in the face of frustration, that when the special needs kids, when they are able to make even a minor breakthrough, to be able to look at that as something, okay, this has been a hard stretch and we've worked hard to help these behaviors diminish. And it hasn't worked for a while, but now it's worked for a couple of days, and that's good. So persistence is a helpful thing. Shall we move on?
Mm-hmm.
Stress in the family with special needs. What this says, and you can read it. is that being a parent in general, it's not exactly a hands-off process, as everybody who's gone through COVID knows, that we need to be differently flexible, we need to be differently responsive, we need to be differently anticipatory, we need to be able to resolve problems, we're able to be resourceful. I mean, all of these things we need to be when the situation changes. So those are situations that we bring as parents to our family anyways. When you factor in a special needs kid, particularly a special needs kid who has a sibling who doesn't have special needs, that's where the extraordinary part of parenting comes in, because we have to do all the regular things that are related to parenting, but also be an interpreter, be a psychologist, be a behavioral specialist, all of these things for our special needs kid when they need it, when he or she needs it, as well as tuning into the different needs, because our other non-special needs kids have a special needs brother or sister, into the things that they need in order to help them navigate the world too. It's really an extraordinary task, an extraordinary job that requires extraordinary parenting. And these are some of the things: jealousy, anxiety, fear, anger, frustration, resentment, blah, 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 blah. All of those things are just come with the territory. None of those are easy feelings to deal with. All of those can present themselves. If you get, for example, a kid who's embarrassed, a lot of time the first response to that is going to be explosive anger. And we need to be able to say, okay, where's this coming from? There may be jealousy, there may be embarrassment, there may be fear, there may be whatever, and to be able to respond to the underlying feelings in that way. And that just presents itself. Those opportunities present themselves more frequently in families when there is a special needs child. Oh my goodness, it's 10:30. So I'm going to have to move forward a little bit. Okay, I'm not going to go over these in great detail. If you're interested in them, you can look at them on the video and you can stop the slides. Essentially, what these are representations of what can happen as a child in the family, a child with special needs in the family sort of grows up, the different relationships that can form between parents, between dad and mom and the siblings without special needs, and between dad and mom and the sibling with special needs. I think this is not the only way, there's another one, and there are many different ways that this can evolve. But these are the things that we hear about the most when we talk with families. Mom is usually the first one to detect the special needs. Mom is usually the first one who has to be the translator. Mom is the first one who has to be the buffer in the world outside. That happens also inside. And that comes with sort of a predictable impact on the way other relationships in the families go. Okay. And then when you look at this in greater detail, you'll be able to, I think that will become clearer. The thickness of the lines, by the way, represent in a very rudimentary way the strength of the bond or the behavioral bond that happens between those particular people. Okay. And this is another one. This is same type of a thing, but a different way that it can, the relationships amongst the people in the family can bear out. In this particular one, both the dad and the mom, lavish, wrong word, give a lot more attention to the child without special needs, and the child with special needs, and the kids without special needs, they sort of got left by the wayside. Okay. And this is a slide that I was talking about a little bit before, that these are some of the social, emotional, behavioral relaxants to special needs in family by the non-special needs sibling. These are some of the things that we see in the non-special needs sibling, whether it's the younger or the older. Sometimes we see hyperachievement, that this is the kid who wants to make up for the academic shortcomings, the social shortcomings that their special needs sibling is experiencing at the moment. And so they want to do great in school. they want to get great grades, and if they don't, if they get an A-, that's crumble time, and they're driven to be the one in the family who's not going to cause problems because there's somebody else who is. On the other hand, it's poor school performance. That is a little bit of the copycat thing that we were talking about before, that either things are so difficult at home that I really can't devote the time that is needed for me to do well in school, or also, this kid isn't doing well in school and gets a whoop-de-doo party when he gives his homework in once. Maybe that's the standard in the family, so I don't have to do well anymore. Precocious maturity, those are the ones who want to almost be the third parent to help out with the child who is having a more difficult time. That happens probably more when the older child is the non-special needs child and the younger child has a special needs, but it can happen both ways too, that sometimes we see the younger child without special needs adopting more of a parenting role with the older sibling. And you can imagine it doesn't always go great. It doesn't always go great. Sometimes it can be very clingy. When kids feel stress in the family, it's hard for them to articulate it. And so one of the things that they want to do is to sort of be near the parents. They don't want to go out so much. They just want to be there and feel a great need for emotional soothing. Or to be the perfect child. I'm going to be the athlete. I'm going to be the academic star. I'm going to be the musical prodigy. I'm going to be everything. I need to be this perfect child because it's better for the family. The family already has enough hard things going on. I need to be the one that's perfect. Hyper empathic. Sometimes kids can be so driven to understand and demonstrate empathy toward everybody in the family, particularly the kid with special needs, that they really don't know where they are. They have a hard time describing how they're feeling or how they're responding to things or how things are going with them, because their antenna is so focused outside to make things go more smoothly in the family that they kind of lose track of where they are, if that makes any sense. Yes. Regression, sometimes they go backwards in the way that they behave. A lot of times it's for attention. Sometimes they regress because, I don't know, they're ready to move on to a different developmental stage, and they're not quite ready for that. And they don't know if the family's ready for that. And so sometimes they regress. Sometimes they distance themselves from the family. They don't want anything to do with it. They want to be out of the house as often as they can. They want to develop a social life outside the family, so that gives them a sense of having kind of normal interactions and normal relationships. Promiscuity can happen sometimes too, that if there's not a lot of affection and love and attention available in the house because it's focused on the kids with special needs, sometimes they get it through relationships with the opposite sex or non-opposite sex, but in a relationship with a partner like that. And asocial, that's, sometimes when there's no way I can leave this family, it's in such extremis that I need to stay home, so I'm not going to be with my friends. Okay. Make it very hard for me to be the parent I imagine that be. Things that kids with special needs want their sibs to know. This is when we were at school and we would go into the classes of our kids and just talk about it. When the kids had siblings, just ask how that went. And we asked them specifically, what would you like them to know? So these are kind of a distillation of the things that we had heard from that. And this is, Eve, this is what I was talking with you about before. You'll see that the two on the bottom are blue, not because they're any more special than the other ones, but they have sort of triggered some of the things that we can do as parents in response to that. So things that they want their sibs to know, that when you remind us that you can do something better than we can, our feelings get hurt. And that happens a lot when we talk about kids who are in a competitive world in school, particularly if you don't happen to have a special needs. Kids are drawn to be able to tout the things that they can do. And for our kids, their non-special needs siblings maybe talking in a very normal way about something that they can do, but just these other kids say, oh, really? This is another thing that I am lesser than you about, and it's really hard. So we can sort of try to balance that. That we feel embarrassed a lot about the level of work we do in school, so we'd rather not hear you think that our work is easy, even when you're trying to help. Like when sometimes younger and older kids, both ways, when they try to help the other ones, and when they say, oh, this is easy. Oh, really? If it were easy, I wouldn't need your help. So the normal thing, just to control the language that we use. They want their non-special needs siblings to be able to manage, just to be sensitive to that language. And we can usually only remember about 10 seconds of direction that takes a minute to tell us that, it's hard for us to pay attention. And so when you get frustrated that we can't catch up on things, that's hard. Nobody believes that the simple things can be so difficult for us. Change that even from simple things to things that I've done before. Sometimes if it's a wrong day, those things that I've done before I can't manage this. And so this is, for those particular things, what we can do as parents. So the things in the box are suggestions of things that we can do. And it's really important that we educate everybody in the family about the nature and strengths and challenges that everybody brings to the table. It's important to know and to be able to teach and engage in the process of talking about the fact that everyone has strengths and challenges. And that with our different profiles, sometimes there's a particular constellation of things that are hard. And if you happen to have a learning disability, if you have attention problems, if you have to be on the spectrum, that profile brings with it, when it manifests in this person in our family, brings with it strengths and weaknesses that we can talk about. But it is not, when we educate, when we talk about what it's like to have a learning difference or attention deficits, attention deficits, those things are important for kids to learn. They don't know that on their own. They need to know the nature of a learning disability, again, at the level that they can understand, but they need to know that. And they need to know that the kids who are experiencing difficulties, that they're not kind of doing it on purpose. If they have been able to do it well once and then they can't do it most of the time, they're not doing it just for attention most of the time. And for siblings 9 and over, have a family viewing of Rick Lavoie's video. One of the things that we used to do for the sibling nights that we had at school is we had a viewing for the parents and the non-special needs kids of this video. And most of you have probably seen it already. But we used to do that video, and then the kids would go off in groups of similar ages, and then I would talk with the parents about how things were going, and the kids would get a chance to talk about the way things were. But it provided for the kids an opportunity to get a little bit of an insight about the nature of the condition that their conditions that their siblings with special needs have when they see it every day in school or when they're in with their friends or on teams and those sorts of things. There was one sibling. We did this for the siblings, and this kid was really, really, really bright and was just awful with his twin who happened to come to our school. And so he came. I didn't have him in the group. I had the parents in the group, and the parents called the next day and said he was so moved by this that he'd like to be able to come in and talk more. How can we get him more information? I said, well, just have him come in and talk. We spent such an hour together, and this kid is maybe 11 years old, 10, 11 years old, but just had great questions and great insights and great curiosity about what are some of the things that made his brother, his twin, tick, related to the fact that he had attention problems and learning disabilities. And so it can be a pretty powerful experience. Special needs kids, again, we get frustrated when we lose almost every argument because you talk faster than we can. They don't have the language to be able to negotiate and be able to resolve conflicts. And so when we get into a situation when they're negotiating and the non-special needs sibs just steamrolls the other kid, that's gonna cause a blow up. We get angry and blow up and say mean things. When we get angry, we usually don't mean them exactly that way. We are responding to emotions that we feel. And it's all more frustrating than you could ever think. Yeah, I remember the kid who said that. And then the last two, we hate it when we get teased by you in front of your friends or in front of ours. And we love it when you say something nice about me that I can do with your friends. Okay. Celebrate sibling differences and accomplishments. One of the things that we can do as parents, and avoid comparing siblings. Promote self-esteem and prevent wedges, and third-party checks. When we talk about the good things that somebody's done to another person, either within earshot or with the idea that that person comes back to the kid and say, you know, I heard your sibling do, or your mother say about what you've been doing. That's really, really good. A huge reinforcing experience for kids who are struggling. And what the non-special needs sibs want their sibs to know, it makes me crazy when you tell on me for every little thing I do or say. And it's hard when you get so frustrated with me, even when I'm trying to help. Why do you always have to get your way or you'll cry? You know, when kids talk about the things that make them crazy, is that how volatile the kids can be, and so hyper responsive to frustration. I know you can do way more things than you're asked to do by mom and dad, but you complain and complain until you get out of it. I think people can relate to that. One of the things we can do, and ensure that the sib with special needs has the opportunity to contribute to family responsibilities to a degree just beyond what his or her capabilities are. That's kind of an important thing, and we can talk for an hour about how we can do that. But just to keep in mind, we want kids to reach a little bit. And so when we give the kids with special needs responsibilities in the family, and that's a really good thing for them to do, we want those responsibilities for them something that they need to learn, first of all, that they don't just have it. We want them to do some of the things that they already know how to do, but also have the opportunity, you know, to learn it. You know, when you're getting the clothes out of the hamper and put it in the laundry basket, check the pockets to make sure there's no tissues in it. You know, do that. And things like that. So they can feel both. The special needs kid can feel that he is participating, and the non-special need kids feels that, okay, it's not just me who has to contribute like this. Okay. And because we want our kids to reach, we need to prepare to teach and to review and reteach, because they're not going to learn it the first time. But it really is that important that kids be actively involved, all kids be actively involved in the family, that we need to position ourselves to do that. Make sense? Yes. I worry about you even when I'm so pissed off at you. Yeah, that is, there are too many stories about each one of these because we'd go on for 2 hours. But that was one of the things that one of the kids said. And you always make up things that I'm doing bad to you. You know, when I say that I don't want you to teach, or I don't want you to do something with me, you tell mom and dad that I hit you. I really didn't hit you. I just want some private time, and that makes me crazy. I'm frustrated that I can't have my friends come over to the house, and you're so mean to mom and dad. That is something that that kids can be really sensitive to. And then it's so frustrating when you beg me to play a game and you quit. And it's so much better to work out problems together ourselves instead of you telling on me to mom and dad. So what is important for us to do to help with that process is to teach and model positive listening and conflict resolution skills. Using phrases like, let me check if I'm understanding you, or what I just said was important, can you tell me what it means so I can make sure I said it correctly, can focus the kids and us on the importance of communication clarity. It's really important. Siblings can learn and do learn a lot from one another. When that learning is stalled, or there's a roadblock in that learning, that's when we can teach them. And we can teach them a lot, particularly when it comes to communication. We can teach them by modeling that when we're dealing with kids in frustrating situations, when we demonstrate patience, when we demonstrate active listening, when we demonstrate that we know where their conflict comes from, and we want to make sure that we are listening so carefully, or being so careful with feelings, that we don't want that conflict to get any worse. And then when we can do that with our kids, it really does show up, and the kids be able to do that better themselves. Not right away, but it's something that's a good thing to know. Make sense? Yes? I can't understand how you get all the attention and still whine and complain. Sorry, but that's what they say. And why do you act one way in front of mom and dad and totally different when you're with me? And then I know things are hard for you, but you make it impossible to feel bad for you to try to help, because every time there's not every time, but a lot of times when there's an overture from the non-special needs sib to the other, that there's a rebuff or an explosion. And it's not fun when you butt in when I have my friends over and tell on me when I get mad and tell you to leave, when you act like a dork, and then, I can't stand it because I want to be with my friends, and then I get in trouble with that. Acknowledge the feelings of anger and frustration and discouragement and sadness, etc., that the kids feel, because they're real. They're not comfortable. It's not our best side when we feel so angry and discouraged and embarrassed, but they're real. We need to acknowledge that they're real and that they come from a place that is genuine and rational. It's like the bumper sticker that you see in the car. Feelings happen too. Being made to feel guilty about uncomfortable feeling exacerbates the negative expression of them. The expression of the feelings is important. And a parent's job is to help kids find more constructive ways to act on these feelings, not to say they shouldn't be feeling them. When you feel angry, what are some of the things that help you? When you take a step back from that, I can't deal with this right now, I'll come back and I'll talk with you in a minute. When they feel discouraged, to be able to talk about the things that are layers and layers of frustration. And kids aren't going to be able to generate that right away. We as parents need to be able to understand that there are other feelings underneath these feelings, or for these behaviors under there are feelings underneath the behaviors that we see and the expressions that we see. And it's good for us to be able to help them deal with that, and for us to be able to articulate them. Yes. Okay. Now I can't believe we're actually doing okay, Eve. Now these are the tips that we were talking about. You've seen some of them already underneath those blue things that we had before. And so educate everybody in the family, acknowledge the feeling, model the qualities you want your kids to adopt: patience, tolerance, acceptance, resourcefulness, resilience, and shoot for 33%. It is really hard to be patient and tolerant when things seem to be spinning out of control. And sometimes we lose it. And sometimes we are not using the words that we want to use. And sometimes we are not demonstrating patience. And sometimes we are not tolerant of the different paces of learning that our kids are going through. But when we can do that, give yourself a pat on the back and know that it's having a positive effect on the kids, because we are modeling in our interactions with them the qualities that we want them to be able to demonstrate as well. Celebrate the differences. Design tasks that involve the kids working together for an incentive that all the kids prize. And this can be, decide on some goal, or if you know what the goal is, that all the kids can do it, and there's not a particular time limit on it. You don't need to. So if your kids respond better than that, you can put a time limit on that. But you want the kids to be able to work together, with you being there to help when they ask for it in a good way, but not to be the referee of this process. But if the kids want it, it will be an incentive for them to work together and get it done. And working together and have everybody be a part of that process is an important thing. This is something that we do in classes a lot. And it's probably easier to do in class, but it's a concept that it's activities that promote cooperation and demonstrating responsibility amongst a different group of kids. Ensure that you build in time to spend with each child individually. This is really important. This was what all the literature talks about. It is normal that our kids with special needs, whether they're the older or the younger kids, get more time. They get more time related to homework. They get more time related to soothing. They get more time related to helping them with a process. They get more time just in general. Kids who don't have special needs are very, very sensitive to that. And this is not, if you watch the video, this is not giving equal time at all. It's just understanding that everybody should get the time that they need. The special needs kid needs a lot of time for a lot of different things. The non-special need kids need some time with parents as well. It doesn't need to be the same amount of time. It doesn't mean doing the same things, but find a way, find an activity, find a time where you can spend with the non-special needs kids that's as close to sacrosanct as it can, which demonstrates to the non-special needs kids that you really think this is important. It's something that you want to do as well, and to be able to carve that time out. For siblings 9 and over, watch the Fat City thing. View it yourselves first to see, and try to not pay attention to the shoulder pads and big hair. Siblings frustration and antagonizations, if that's a word, persist. Go to a therapist or a sibling workshop. The longer that the conflict continues unabated, the more entrenched these attitudes and these behaviors are going to become. And so it's fine. There are people who do this, that they help families with that. Maintain a social engagement outside the family. One of the common things that happens when there's a special need kid as a family is that everybody sort of circles the wagons, and all the attention is focused on the family. Part of that is that it can sometimes be difficult with a special needs kids who doesn't know how to be so social and maybe has a hard time managing feelings and frustration. And that can be temper tantrum-y. You sort of don't want that to be outside. When we can have social contact outside the family, it's good for everybody. Teach and model positive listening. That. Okay. I think we're about done. These are just the resources understood in Child Mind Institute and Betty Osmond. That's a great article. And thanks for tuning in. This made me laugh too. They told him he was deaf, but did he listen? No. Okay, questions.
We have no questions right now. So everybody,
they're generating. I talk too fast.
No, you did talk very fast at the end. That was great. Yeah, here we go. When will the recording be available? As soon as our tech master gets to it, definitely by tomorrow, probably by later this evening.
And because I'm not involved, it won't be next month.
And no, it will definitely be. Can you show the references again?
Sure.
Can you backtrack? Great.
Oh. Yes.
Okay, remember this page and everything else will be, you will get this.
Mm-hmm.
I have 5 people asking for that reference page.
Okay.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And now this is, I can look and see if I have more as well, if this is valuable.
I think everybody's asking for the references.
Okay.
Okay. Is it okay for non-special needs sibs to know that you as parents get frustrated and exhausted with their special needs siblings sometimes too?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think what we want is, again, in another whole talk, we talk about affective communication. It's not something that we humans are very good at. We don't express our feelings very readily or very articulately sometimes. And one of the things we want our kids to learn are that, we have feelings. We have feelings. And, we're not always this poised, kind of pillar of patience that, we are sometimes. But yeah, absolutely we get frustrated in those things. It's really, really good. And then we talk about those are the feelings. I find it best when I respond to those feelings like this. When I am feeling impatient, I figure out ways for me to demonstrate patience in a different way. When I'm feeling frustrated, I want to go back and realize that he's not doing this on purpose. She's not doing this on purpose. This is part of the deal. And so, yeah, I think in the process of talking with our kids and educating our kids, it's good to talk about the feelings that we have, to pair them with the things that we have found that work well when we respond to these feelings in this particular way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How do you explain to younger children of special? How do you explain, I think, to the younger kids with special needs that they have inconsistent consequences? Why they have inconsistent consequences?
Why they have inconsistent consequences? Yeah. I think when we talk with our kids with special needs, is this about talking with the kids without special needs? When they say, why does this, why does he get to do all this stuff that I get nailed for, and he can do it with, or she can do it with impunity? That's when you educate about, as part of the profile of a kid with attention problems or on the spectrum or with a learning disability, that inconsistency is part of that profile. So there are going to be times when there's going to be an oops, but that's part of the deal for this other person. And so, yeah, it's really important that when we are teaching the sibling with special needs, that we don't want to hammer them for not achieving. To teach them means that we praise them for moving progressively toward achieving a particular goal. So there are going to be some things that are going to happen that are not related to that, but we're really going to focus on the things that the kids are able to progress towards.
And I think, so what you're saying is probably that you're explaining to the kids, to the typical kid and to the kid with special needs, why about the inconsistencies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, it's good for the special needs kids. Remember when we talked about having them reach? If we see that they don't have the capacity to be able to demonstrate a particular behavior or manage a particular responsibility or do whatever, and that they're not doing it consistently, but sometimes they do demonstrate capacity to be able to do this, then it's good for them to know, yeah, I know that this has been part of the things that we've accepted while you've been learning, but you know what, right now, we want to give you another kind of an incentive. Besides praise for what you're doing well, there are going to be consequences for you to decide not to do your responsibility for the family, or decide not to respond in a particular way to your schoolwork or whatever it's going to be. So there will be times where you have floated as you're learning without specific consequences, but we think there's a little stall here and we want to provide you a little boost. And so understand that if you decide not to do this, you are choosing to accept this particular consequence. That's a good paradigm. If paradigm is the right word, it's a good paradigm for all kids to know anyways. Quid pro quo. Is that lawyerese?
It is indeed. Thank you. This is very informative. Do you know any support groups for sibs?
That's a great question. I should, but I don't. Do you know any, Eve? It's something that I could.
That was one thing that we used to have here in Wilton long ago. Yeah. That was fabulous. The sib shops.
Sib shops, yeah. I mean, that would be the one that I would say.
I'm happy to look into it. And see, and if I find it, it will be posted with the video later or tomorrow with resources.
And I'll do the same thing.
Okay.
I'll look for it as well.
How much should non-special needs sibling know about their special needs sibling's diagnosis, and what age is appropriate?
Depends upon the kids. I mean, kids' cognitive development and emotional development is so variable. that it's hard to know what degree of understanding they would have about the intricacies of something that's really hard to understand, which is a learning disability or attention problem or being on the autism spectrum. We have found that when we did our sibling workshop, that we first said age 10, but there are some kids aged 9 who can really handle it and really understand it. And so then we had them watch the video. It is a good practice to, as kids are growing up at every stage, the kids are, that they get some distillation of the situation that their special needs sibling is going through to help with their understanding of the situation, not as an excuse, not as anything other than, you'll notice that there are some things that you learn really, really quickly. You just have to do it a couple of times. And you'll notice, because I notice that you're frustrated when your sibling, your brother or sister, it takes a lot more times to do that. That's the way his or her brain works at this stage. It just takes a little bit more time and takes a little bit more repetition. And sometimes we get frustrated with that, but it's good to know that he's not doing it on purpose and she's not doing it on purpose. And she is moving. Remember how she wasn't able to do this for a while, and now she can. She'll get there in these other things too, but it's hard. That's just the way her brain works. Different brains work different ways. Stuff like that. Most kids can understand something like that. And as kids get older, a lot of times when we talk with kids, it triggers a curiosity, and they will ask questions. And depending upon the way that they ask their questions and the way you know they're your kids, you can get into more detail in the way that you respond to them. But it's a good one to know that we all have different brains and our brains work different ways. And that's when we talked about celebrating the strengths and challenges of everybody in the family. That is a way to let everybody know that, yeah, brains are different and they're not lockstep the same thing all the time. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's so very helpful. How would you suggest supporting a younger sibling? Okay, how would you suggest supporting a younger sibling, both and the older sibling are both teens, who has significant health needs and a progressive condition that has to do with significant health needs? How would you suggest supporting the younger sibling of an older sibling who has progressive health needs?
No, and that is a great question. And I would love to say that I'm the person to talk with about that. Depending upon the condition, depending upon the way the condition is going to manifest itself, depending upon the timeline of that information, first of all, talking with the physician who has dealt with this before is likely to give you better information about what it is. And based on what you've learned, then you can either ask for her or their doctors or his advice about how to communicate that to the family, or to the younger sib, or you can do that yourself. I don't know if the younger sibling asks questions about it, then there's a curiosity and a desire to learn. And so what you know from the physician about it, you can, depending upon the age of the sibling, sort of distill that information about it. It would be, I believe, but I'm not sure about this. That's why it's good to talk to the doctor. It's probably good for both kids to know what each one knows.
This is a follow-up. At what age do you suggest siblings can be told the name of the actual diagnosis of their sibling? What age would you start saying, for instance, your brother has difficulty with X, Y, and Z, versus start to name it and say your brother has autism and the things like X, Y, and Z come along with the autism?
Yeah, I think describe the profile first. Describe the manifestations of the behaviors, attitudes, those sorts of things first, and then once the kids sort of get a grasp of, okay, this area is hard, this area is hard, this area is hard, then you can say, you know what, there are a number of kids with similar strengths and weaknesses as your sister has or as your brother has. They have a name for that. The name is sort of a learning difference or a learning disability or ADHD or whatever it's going to be. But I think it's good for the kids to know the details of the profile before they know the name. Because the name, if you just say the name, it can go in so many different directions. And ADHD is so different, and each kid or each adult who has ADHD, good to be able to describe what your son or daughter's manifestation is and then put a label on it. That's my
and I know that the age is difficult to know depending on the kid, but you had said 9 or 10 before?
9 or 10 as sort of an introduction, but if you're talking with your kids over time, if you start talking with your kids when they're 8 years old and they are able to understand the way that brains work differently and that some people in the family have a hard time with this and other people with that, once they have a grasp on that sort of constellation of strengths and challenges that their sibling happens to have, then that's the most important thing rather than the calendar. If the kids have an understanding of what the profile is like for this particular sibling of theirs, then you can tag a name to it.
Okay. Is it better to always take the special needs child to all family events, or is it okay to sometimes say, this isn't something that the special needs kid will enjoy, so he's going to stay behind and do something that he enjoys better?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always, those are parental judgments that are driven by the gut. I would suggest that there may be times when the non-special needs kid needs to be left out of a particular activity as well, for whatever reason, just for that balance, so that the special needs kids doesn't feel that, okay, I'm really a part of this family until they're doing something social or until they're doing something fun, and then I can't do it. To be able to try to balance it that way would be a thought to have in the back of your head. But yeah, that's fine. If I can add to that for just 1 minute.
Yeah.
There are going to be some times that we don't want the special needs kids to come a particular activity because of history. And the history says that I can't really pay attention so much to it, or gets disruptive when they feel bored, or it just has a difficult time for these particular reasons. Ergo, we're not going to put this kid in this situation. That ergo makes sense. Between times, teach the kids, what are some different things to do when they're bored? Okay, the last time we were here, you were bored and you wanted to go home all the time, and you just whined and complained until we all had to miss it. That's not so great. If you get bored, what are some things that we can bring with us that you can do by yourself to be able to sort of take care of yourself while the particular boring part is by something that you're not interested in is going to happen. So teach the kids that their response to feelings is what is problematic and makes it difficult. And let's sort of roll our sleeves up and get to work to see if we can find a different way to sort of avoid kind of the meltdown things that come related to feelings of losing interest. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're getting more questions about whether or not there are support groups for parents of kids with special needs. So we have done that before. And Dave has done that for us, and it worked out very well, I think. I sent out recently a question to folks who were in the last support group if they're interested in doing it again. I can easily send out another one if Dave would be so kind as to say that he would do it. If there are people interested, so I'm saying it right now, if there are people interested in the support group, please write to me at info@spednet.org, and we'll see what we can do to start another one going. I am happy to look for others. I don't know of any offhand.
Yeah.
Which is why we were having them.
Yeah, maybe we could put another slide in or something that says if you're interested.
Great idea. Okay, we can definitely do that.
And I said, we does that mean me or does that mean you?
That was mean. You.
Okay.
With me on the side. Feels like we have journeyed through many diagnoses over the past 12 years, and there's a sense of weariness to this now.
Exhaustion.
Overall, yeah, exhaustion. We have a large collection of diagnoses and looks more leaning to Asperger's, but it's hard to get a true answer. Maybe social pragmatic communication disorder. So I'm not sure what maybe what we do with all of the weariness and the exhaustion from going through that.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Just my turn. How we handle that exhaustion.
Yeah. The exhaustion is exasperation is another one. Extreme frustration. All those feelings are when we know that something's up with our kid and we feel that it's really important to get letters after his name, whether it's NVLD or ADHD or whatever it's going to be, in order to get the service that they need. And no one is able to give us a consistent letter thing that goes after his name and or her name. That's really, really hard. I think over the period of exploration, when you are able to compile kind of a list of the things that are problematic and strengths for the kids, in areas of, I'm going to give 4, I think, academics. What's tough for this kid at school? Is the reading tough? Is managing homework tough? Is organizing his time difficult? Is whatever, just things related to school. Things at home. What do we have difficulties with this child, or if there are difficulties that he has at home? What about within the social arena? How does he deal with their friends, and does he have friends, and does she have friends? And the other one is the emotional area. How does this kid express emotions? How does this kid articulate emotions? How does this kid respond to emotions? All of those things. And then for those same 4 things, strengths. What does he do well in school? Is he really curious about dinosaurs? Is she really really curious about things related to science and things related to math? And then in the family, what are some things that this particular kid does in a better way than he or she does in other areas? And the same thing with social, and the same thing with emotional. And when we bring that to I don't know, the people who are trying to provide a diagnosis, if they can't provide a diagnosis, then then have that descriptor. Like the care and feeding of my kid includes an understanding of this constellation of strengths and weaknesses, regardless of the things, and then have them respond accordingly. It's hard. It's hard.
I think what he's saying as well is that the kid with special needs is fed up learning the latest diagnosis, especially if it's an obscure diagnosis and not that much is known about it. Something like social pragmatic communication disorder. I don't know for this mom if you heard Nancy Schwartz the last presentation that we did, but that might be something that you'd like to watch, the 2 Nancy Schwartz's videos that we have on the SpedNet website. And if you email me at info@spednet.org or eve@spednet.org of some specific questions, we can talk to Dr. Schwartz about that as well.
Yeah, that's good. And can I just go back to that one thing? And remember also when we were talking about how old the kids have to be before they understand what's going on with their brother or sister after they have a special need. And we talked about the fact that describe the profile, make sure the profile is understood, first, and then you can go to the names. It would be the same thing for your kid. Say, you know what, I don't care if whatever they call it, these are the things that are hard for you. We're looking for sort of a common label so that other people understand this, but we know that these are the things that are going on. These are the positive things you bring to the table. These are problem areas, and so we're moving in that direction.
And this same mom has a last follow-up about the family seems to be splitting into two factions, of the faction that believes this particular diagnosis and one that doesn't. So I think that your last response addressed that as well. Yeah,
that's when education, I mean, it is, well, it isn't, it can be, it so often is stressful in a family when there's a special needs kid. One of the things that when we used to do dads groups, that, the common complaint from the dads is that, my wife is such a softie. She just always gives in whenever the kid is having a hard time. I don't understand that. And those are on Tuesdays. The Friday before would have a support group, and the wife of that guy would say, he so doesn't get it. He just expects that, when he needs, a swift kick in the pants, is that all this kid needs in order to get this stuff done. And there's just such a distance between them. So communication, education, get this article, read this article, and we'll both read it and then we'll talk about it. Let's watch this movie and then we'll both watch it and then we'll talk about it. Those sorts of communications can be really helpful. But it's armed camps sometimes, armed camps. No, you have no clue how to do it. And the other person says, yeah, you have no clue how to do it. So it's just a challenge. It is a challenge. Hello, Beast.
Sorry, we had a little outburst there. Is it okay to tell your special needs kids about their diagnosis or disabilities they have if they are able to understand? If so, how much should be enough?
Ask them.
Yeah.
Ask the kids, say, you know what? I mean, that's when the school year starts and kids would come on to my caseload, and I would meet them for the first time, we could sort of, dance around things if we wanted to. I chose that I didn't really want to do this. And I would just say, so tell me what's easy for you in school and what's hard for you in school. That's all. Just as a matter of fact, let me know. And that gives me a sense of what the kids' thing is. They said, well, school's not hard for me. I said, whoa, then I wonder why your parents sent you to the school, And so, but just get from the kids how they see their performance. And if they don't know how to articulate it, that's when we ask questions that are kind of probing questions a little bit, but kind of questions that we know the answer to. And so we can get from the kids first what they're understanding, what their experience has been, how they articulate their experience, and then we can sort of take whatever they have given us, suggest some of the things that we have seen too to add to that pile, and then we can talk about, if it fits under a diagnosis, if that's the time. And it may not be the first time you have that conversation, but then you can do that. But we'll talk about what the experience is, because that's going to be more meaningful to the kids. I mean, these letters, I had a group of, I don't know, 11, 12 kids in one of the LA classes, Eve. And I talked about, okay, we're going to talk about, this thing called ADHD. And then I put a list of things on the board, procrastinators, can't finish, get distracted during the things happen, and then whatever. I probably have 10 different manifestations. Okay, so how many people have ADHD in this class? And like 9 kids raised their hand. And I said, okay, how many are procrastinators? And 3 would raise their hand. How many people get distracted? Then 8 would raise their hand. I mean, it's different. Each kid experiences these letters in their own way. And there's not a right and there's not a wrong and there's not a worse and there's not a better. It's just different. And the more that we can teach kids that they are not saddled and burdened by these letters, but more that they understand how it manifests. And then there are some things that we can do to help with each one of those things, as opposed to saying, oh, geez, I got ADHD. I'm sunk. I'm never going to be able to do well in school. No, if you have trouble paying attention, then maybe sitting in the front of the room is going to be something that helps. Maybe one of the things that I do when I'm in class, and I know that my attention is fleeting, I ask questions because that keeps me focused. So you have ADHD. It's not the end of the world. Here's the way that it manifests in you. These are some of the things that you could do. So try it out and see if that works. Does that make sense? That was a really long-winded answer. I don't even know if I was close to the question when I get to the end of the answer.
We've got two more, and we've got a lot of people who have stayed on. So if you don't, okay?
Thank you for doing that. Oh, yeah.
Any advice on when and how to tell a younger sibling they are a genetic carrier for a condition that their older sibling is affected by? This means it will affect the younger sibling's family planning in the future.
Yeah, it depends upon the nature of that particular genetic condition. I can talk specifically about LD and ADHD and dyslexia and those sorts of things. Kids are really curious about that when we go in and we talk with kids about learning disabilities, so that the kids understand that where it comes from, what it is, and where it is. And we set it up as a kind of a press conference, that the kids know that somebody who knows a little bit about learning disabilities is coming in. What questions do you want? Almost the universal question is my kid going to get this? Is my kid going to have dyslexia? Is my kid going to have ADHD? And that says, well, statistically says that there's a greater likelihood, but it's not a guarantee, that you're going to have these things. And so they're really curious about it. And I think when you're talking about LD and dyslexia and ADHD, that is we follow that up with the fact that, and who better to have a kid with ADHD or LD than you, because you know what your experience has been like, and you've been able to articulate that, and you have shown yourselves that you can actually do some things that are going to mitigate that are going to make that better. That's a different condition from a condition that may be life-threatening, that may be, I don't know, like hemophilia or something like that is differently genetically connected. So I don't know what age. I know that kids, 8 or 9 years old, are curious about LD and ADHD and that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the nature of the condition would dictate that.
Thank you. I have one more. We have one more. Immediate family went out to dinner to celebrate older Sib's 16th birthday. The younger sister, age 13, with LD and other challenges, had behavior that was not appropriate, probably because more attention was being focused on the older sibling birthday girl, and it made for not so pleasant a birthday. Now this younger sibling wants to go to her favorite restaurant for birthday, but doesn't want to repeat and doesn't want to leave the younger sister out of the family celebration. Any suggestions?
Preparation.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we were talking before about a particular family event, that the kid with special needs, it wouldn't, not tailor-made for that kid. And it was important to anticipate what might happen and plan accordingly. Not that it's going to be perfect, but at least it feels you're modeling the idea. Okay, here's a problem. We're not going to avoid it. We're going to try to make it better, and we're going to give it a good shot. And I'm going to ask you some of the things that you would like to do, and then we'll give it a try. For if you know that when attention is focused on somebody other than the person on whom attention is mostly focused on, which is the special needs girl, that there can be a disruption. sort of talk about that. And, how's it going to feel when you go to this dinner and you're not going to be the center of attention? Think about that, because it's going to feel a little bit weird, maybe. What are some of the things, how have you responded in the past when what are some things that we can do? Because, we want this to go as well as possible, like we want these to go well for you. Sort of engage with the kids about trying to anticipate what might happen, try to anticipate what feelings might be pricked by this particular experience, and then go accordingly. But planning, that's something that we want kids to be able to learn anyway. We want everybody to be able to learn that. And if we show that, the temptation is, if you misbehave, we're leaving. Well, not a good idea, because it's a celebration of somebody else's. And you may not be able to do that. I said, you know what? If you start to feel this way, what are some of the things that we can do to help them? Help that a little bit. We're taking a break. If we went for a little walk or something like that, let's just like anticipate. It may not happen. It may be just perfectly fine. And sometimes just the talking about it in advance really is almost like an inoculation against those feelings, but it gives the sense that we can sort of plan for this. Yes.
Yes. And we got a thank you for helpful advice for future birthers.
Good. Okay. Thanks for tuning in. It's fun to do this. I wish I could see faces, but
yeah. So okay. The last thing so that was great. Thank you for doing that extra half hour.
Sorry, I did go on.
Okay. What? Yeah. Will you send me your updated? So you'll send me your updated presentation, because I see that you had a couple of updated things, yeah. And everybody will send it out either later this afternoon, this evening, or tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll do that right now.
Any other questions, feel free to send them to me, and I'll pass them on to Dave. If it's something very particular, we'll see how that
or you can send it to me. I think
yes.
Did I put my email address on the front of the things?
Yes, you do.
Yes. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
That's pretty funny.
Okay.
The phone rings. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope we can do this again.
So much, Dave. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, bye, everybody. Thanks.